all new inside.
Town of Prescott Valley work study meeting, May 4th, 2022. Call to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Kinsinger.
Present.
Councilmember Dickinson.
Here.
Councilmember Hepperly.
Here.
Councilmember Schumacher.
Present.
Councilmember Packard.
Present.
Vice Mayor Hunt.
Here.
Mayor Polguta.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. I'd like to correct that. It's not work study. It's a special town council meeting. And we'll just jump right into new business, enterprise fleet management agreement. Mr. Crow, or Mr. Davidson, are you going to start us off?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'll kick it off, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Crow. This item is in reference to when we met with council to talk about the strategic plan and the future of PV. The first focus area, the most important focus area, is about people and being a high-performing team. As we began developing this budget and thinking about where do we make key investments to help support that effort, this item certainly rose to the top in terms of the tools and equipment, the resources that our staff uses to be able to do their job on behalf of the community, the public. So what we're going to be presenting tonight is kind of a new approach to how we can manage our fleet going forward. So you're going to hear some information from Mr. Crow, who manages our, the town's fleet, and he's going to give an overview. And then we have someone that's representing our enterprise fleet services, and they're going to talk about the specifics with it if you have questions at any point. But primarily what we're driving at is, first and foremost, is a safety component. The vehicles that we drive, obviously, very important that from a safety perspective with the equipment that's in the vehicles, that it's up to par. Second is maintenance costs. As vehicles get older and we have an older fleet, those vehicle maintenance costs continue to rise, and so we put a lot of money into trying to keep vehicles running around the community. And then the third component, which is hard to put a value to, but there's a sense of pride for not only employees but our communities. So when an employee shows up in a good piece of equipment and is able to do their job, it helps them to do a better job on behalf of the public. And I also think that when our public sees good equipment on site, it represents where we're trying to go as a community. So all three of these things, from that safety, the maintenance, and just the overall effort that we put into our tools and equipment for our employees, is critically important. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Crow, who's going to give us an overview of our fleet and what this is going to entail, and then on from there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Welcome, Mr. Crow.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Nice to be here. This is an exciting day for me in the fleet department. Those of you who don't know me, Kel does. I've been with the town for over 15 years, all of which in the fleet department. Going forward, the fleet department, what I'll classify as anything that has wheels under it. We're at 210 plus units that the fleet department maintains. What we're discussing here today is 165 of them. That's just the vehicle. Eliminates the heavy duty and equipment that goes with it, trailers, stuff of that nature. In the past, we've been purchasing 4, 5, 6, 7 vehicles a year, and that's not getting us to where we need to be. The majority of our vehicles, as it states here in the paperwork, 10 years old. A lot of them 100,000, 120,000 plus miles. Yeah, there we go. The majority of which are our police department. 89 vehicles is what our police department maintains. That's the largest fleet in our town. They run 24/7. They put on the most miles. So going forward with this program that we're bringing to you, 23 of the vehicles will be replaced, will be police department vehicles. 18 of them will be patrol vehicles. I have a list here of some 2011 Tahoes that have 100 to 130,000 miles. Some of them have 15,000 engine hours on them. That's a 2011. That's what our patrol officers are running right now. We got some 2014s, 100,000 plus miles with 12 and 13,000 engine hours. We got some 2016 Ford Explorers you would think are new, 100,000 miles on them with 10,000, 12,000 engine hours. We actually have some 17s, 2017 Ford Explorers with 90 to 100,000 miles on them with the same 10, 12,000 engine hours. They need to be replaced. The cost of these vehicles is progressively going up. Once you get to a term of about 70,000 miles, just out of warranty, the expense goes up astronomically. Well, we're bringing this to you. 23 vehicles will be for the police department. 7 more will be across the town. 2 in Public Works, 2 in Parks, 2 in Developmental Services. Well, let me rephrase that. Community Services would be Parks. I'm old school. It's still Parks. 2 in Developmental Services and 1 in Utilities. All these vehicles we're replacing there are, the oldest one would be in 1995, 01. So I'm looking forward to this program. If you have any questions, I would be glad to answer them. On a personal note, this one's for the mayor and Miss Hepperly. Back in the day when you two, you and Matt were on the UC squad, the white Jeep, the brown Jeep, I just retired the brown Jeep 2 weeks ago for a bad transmission. One of these vehicles we're replacing here is your old white Jeep.
I was also going to say one of those Tahoes is leaking oil in my driveway right now.
Yeah, and them 2 Jeeps, the one I just retired for a bad transmission was an 02. We bought it used and put it in service in 07. The same with the Jeep that the mayor drove when he was on the squad. We put it into service used at an 07. It's still in service today. It's getting a little expensive. So I hope you look at this. I'm happy about it. I'm excited about it. I just look for your judgment and guidance.
Well, Mr. Crowe, I'd just like to start off with, hey, great presentation on this. And if there's anyone that is an expert in our town on fleet, hands down, it is you. I trust everything you've said, and I agree with you. Although there is going to be a little bit of a cost, it's definitely worth it in a safety point of view for our employees. So,
Yeah, you know, and you look at the costs up front right now from what I seen, and I first took a gasp at it. But if we were going to stay at the same program we're at right now, I would be coming before you right now asking to purchase a minimum, that's just flat purchase, a minimum of 10 vehicles, which would still not be enough to get us to the point where we need to be. We're still behind the times on trying to get caught up to where we're rolling nicely. So if I was to come to you today and ask for 10 vehicles to be purchased, that would be $500,000 plus dollars.
And I know in the past, the mantra was old school thinking of we can do more with less.
Correct.
It trickled down to our vehicles.
Right.
At some point, that has to be retired, and
Yeah.
and this is the direction we need to
We've done good for a long time. It's time to think and do a little better. You know, not just for our public, but also for our employees.
Councilman?
Just a quick question. I forgot. How often are we going to be turning these as we get into this program? So let's say the first group that we get now, or starting next year. How soon do you think those will be turning over? Is that like 5 years out, or what's our game plan?
For the police vehicles, ideally, it would be right at the 6-year range.
Okay.
That'd take us about 1 year past the warranty stage, because that's about, from all my experience, about a year past warranty is when
Get rid
the
of it.
costs go up.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And plus, at that point in time, as Renee will state when she comes up and speaks, the resale value on them is still well. So we're not losing as much on the back end.
Right, okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you for a great presentation. You and I got to chat for a little while before the meeting, and I had asked you, were they going to come to us turnkey, light bars, everything else, and you said yes. So that's another added advantage with our new logo on the door.
Correct.
And then I think this is so important. In a previous life, I worked for a community that leased vehicles, and it was so much better, not only for image, as Mr. Davidson said, but also for high-performing team and to make them proud. So we won't see any of these until December, correct?
That would be a question for Renee.
Okay.
I know with the times we're living in now, vehicle purchases are a little slower than normal. You know, I put in some POs and purchased some last August. I'm still waiting on them. Wow. And so is everybody else. I was just conversing with ADOT last week, gentleman that I deal with on a regular basis in regards to some of our auction items we pick up from them, some of their good used hand-me-downs. And he's waiting on 40 dump trucks. He did the same thing. He ordered them in August.
So the staff report says 4-year cycle. You just said 6-year for PD.
Yeah, well, I mean, it would be nice to be on a 4-year cycle, like we were talking out there earlier. It may be a fluid thing, depending on, you know, time, miles, and the numbers, and what is the best positive influence and outcome for us in the end. I personally would like a 4-year cycle. I think all our employees would like a 4-year cycle, but I know budget-wise, money-wise,
Right.
that may not be something we can honestly do in a 4-year cycle. I would love that. It may be 5.
I like the idea of a local account team and then also the mobile app. And then, so Gilbert, these numbers, or Katie maybe, these numbers keep going higher and higher. There's a point where they level off, right?
Correct, Vice Mayor.
Okay.
After the final year on there, it's projected at that amount annually. Up to that point, we are going to be getting some money back from the sale of vehicles that are in our current fleet, so that'll help offset those costs. Additionally, it'll be as we involve more and more vehicles into the program is why that amount keeps going up, and then it'll level off. We'll see changes after that year to year, depending on what we add to the fleet as our staff numbers grow along with everything else.
Council, you have anything for Mr. Crowe? Councilman?
This is 500,000, is that correct? Is what we're talking about here?
The number for this year,
Yes.
I couldn't say off of that one, Katie, this year. Correct.
Okay. Just to put it in perspective, a fire truck fully equipped costs over $800,000 now, so we're getting a deal is the way I look at it.
Ma'am, is there anything you would like to come add? You'll have to come to the microphone, please.
Just for all you know, this is Renee from Enterprise Fleet Maintenance. She has all the good numbers.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just want to thank you all for allowing me to come here and present today. Renee Milam, Enterprise Fleet Management. That was a bit better. Make sure my clicker works too. Again, thank you so much. I've been with Enterprise for 7 years now. Been working with not just corporate clients, but many municipalities here in Arizona with this program. So thank you again for allowing me to come and share some of the benefits of partnering with us. 3 main benefits I'm going to talk about today are cost savings, convenience, and control. And I have a PowerPoint I'm going to go through, but I'll stop after each couple of slides and see if there are any questions going forward. Okay? All right, so unique advantage. By utilizing Enterprise's infrastructure, what we're going to be able to help the town of Prescott do is really streamline their fleet processes. And by doing that, you're going to use our local team of experts here to really take you guys out of the car business. So what we're going to do is create strategic plans to really help you guys reduce your fleet budget from a capital and an operating standpoint. And then it's an ongoing partnership that really makes us different than the dealership. We're going to be meeting with Jim, Katie, the rest of the staff on a quarterly basis to really look at your guys' fleet and make some suggestions of how we can continue to improve the safety by keeping the costs down as well. And that really starts by tailoring, like Lori said, a turnkey type partnership. That's where it all begins. We sit down with the staff, we look at all the resources that are available to them, and really decide and determine what are the best resources and infrastructure for the town of Prescott Valley to utilize. And it's going to be different. It's different for different municipalities, it's different for different clients, but ideally we want to make this so we can give Jim, Katie, whoever the staff is, more time back in their day. Because obviously they have more priorities to the town of Prescott other than just the fleet.
Prescott Valley, ma'am.
Prescott Valley, sorry. Am I saying it right? Is it Prescott? Or
Prescott Valley, yeah. We don't care what Prescott does.
All right. And so what Enterprise constantly does is we have about 2 million vehicles that we manage worldwide, and we're constantly collecting data on these vehicles. And as you're mentioning about, when are we looking at, cycling out of those vehicles, and it's going to be different. It's a moving target. It's going to be different based on the type of vehicle, how much aftermarket equipment's going into that vehicle. So, a sedan is going to be different than a police Tahoe versus maybe one of the public service trucks. So that's what our team is going to do. They're going to constantly be working with your staff here to determine that optimal time to replace. Very simple concept. What we want to do, what Enterprise has done for 50 years, is buy low and sell high. So a lot of people are familiar with our Enterprise rental division, and so what we're doing is the same philosophy for our corporate clients. A lot of people don't realize that if we were to go ahead and buy 1,000 vehicles today, we could actually turn around and sell them for a profit. So what we're simply suggesting for the town of Prescott Valley is to go ahead and look at cycling sooner than later and really capitalizing on that equity that would be available to you. Any questions so far? Okay. So this is really a unique resale channel that only Enterprise offers. And so the nice thing is all of our partners get to piggyback on this resale chain. And what we do is we actually group our vehicles together and we put them out to the specific dealerships, unique buyers that only buy from us, and we let them bid that up. So we end up selling that to the highest bidder, and in turn, that equity comes back to our partners and to Enterprise. And then again, it's all about safety. As Jim mentioned, it's a way for a lot of our partners to really focus on the safety of the vehicles. Technology has really advanced a lot over the last 5 to 6 years. I just drove through unfortunately an accident on the way here, and with electronic stability control, that's really been a technology that they're recommending for all people to have in their vehicles because it's really reduced fatality by about 50%. Full maintenance, that's one of the things that we had spoke with here with your team on that they thought that they would be able to utilize. We're able to offer a program that's already set up in your town, Prescott Valley. So they'll be utilizing the vendors already here, keeping everything local. And not only will this help them keep control costs, but it'll also offer control because everything will be logged into the client website. For Jim to access however he wants, for Katie to access, for Norm, whoever it may be. All that information will be automatically at their fingertips. And there's 2 different types of maintenance programs that we can offer for not only the vehicles purchased through Enterprise, but the vehicles the town of Prescott Valley already owns. Just wanted to show you, this is kind of at a glance, some of the vendors that are already set up through our program, through our infrastructure right here in town. 16 to 18 different partners. And if there's a specific partner that you'd like us to add, we can do that as well. And then last but not least, I said control and convenience. The mobile app, the drivers will be able to utilize that if they do need to go into service, if they need to call for roadside assistance, if they need to take pictures at an accident, they can all do that right from the mobile app. And then, of course, like I said, the website, having all that maintenance, all that fleet information at the tips of their fingertips, so we can help them make better fleet decisions going forward. And that's all I have on that. Any questions?
Council?
Who does oil changes? Do we have to do that, or do you guys do that?
Through our maintenance program, that would be anything preventative and non-preventative would be covered for the life of the vehicle.
Right, but does our staff have to take it to the oil place to get changed? Yes, okay.
Not necessarily. We actually, so the city of Kingman already set up a concierge service at one of their local vendors. They actually go and pick up the vehicles and return them for them. So that is a possibility as well.
Council, anything else? Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. All right. Thank you.
If we have no other questions, we'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve an agreement with Enterprise Fleet Management to provide fleet management services for town vehicles by electronic vote.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Clerk, please call the vote.
Councilmember Schumacher,
Yes.
Councilmember Dickinson.
Yes.
That passes unanimously, Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to item 3, adjournment.
I make a motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
Clerk, please call the vote.
Councilmember Schumacher.
Yes.
Councilmember Dickinson.
Here.
Yes.
That passes
Yes.
unanimously.
Yes.
We'll just clarify, Councilwoman, that was a yes?
Yes.
Yes. We'll adjourn. And just give us a few minutes. Call to order. Now it's work study, May 4th, 2022. Clerk, please call the roll again.
Councilmember Kinzinger.
Present.
Councilmember Dickinson.
Here.
Councilmember Hepperly.
Here.
Councilmember Schumacher.
Present.
Councilmember Packard.
Present.
Vice Mayor Hunt.
Here.
Mayor Polguda.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Davison, are you going to kick us off again?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I am very excited to be here today to just give a preview of a lot of work that has taken place over the past number of months. And it really started with all of you as the elected body. When we met and formed the strategic plan, you set some very bold goals. And our team has worked over the past number of months to begin to really incorporate that vision into every element of our organization. And obviously the budget document is a policy document. It's our priorities where we're going to be making key investments in this community. And it reflects the values set by the council, but it's certainly on behalf of our citizens. And so I want to recognize a number of just key individuals, Katie Pell and her entire team, Lisa and the whole team behind Katie have done an amazing job. Because not only were we doing a budget, which is done every year, we tasked the finance department with doing some substantive changes with policies and how this whole process was rolled out. So they have done an amazing job. And not only that, but when you make changes, lots of people within the organization have lots of questions. And we've got to work through all of those. And they have done a great job at taking the time to work with each department on all of these changes. So I just want to recognize her and her whole team for that. I also, want to recognize our department heads and all of the staff behind them that helped to put together all of these numbers. As we go through this, from over the past number of weeks and actually past few months, We ask lots of questions. We dig in on things. As we think deeper about particular projects, we, challenge the departments on how to reimagine things. And they have done an amazing job of always going back and being able to provide additional options and routes on how we get to be able to achieve. So thank yous to all of them, and then certainly to all of you for your support and, again, setting that vision. So what I'm going to just quickly do, because I'm going to save it really for Katie Appel to get into some of the budget detail with you. We'll be talking about the various funds and then each of the departments. But I wanted to give a little bit of a highlight of where we're making some key investments as part of this proposed budget. And again, it's broken out by the council's strategic plan. And so obviously the first and most important thing is our people, and that is that being that high-performing team. We all know that we have rising costs, and so this budget reflects making a across-the-board 4% cost of living adjustment for all employees. At this particular point, we're looking at employees that have been with us 6 months or longer would have the 4%. Those that have just recently joined would not have that, because more likely than not, they've been set at a market rate that has been where we're trying to be competitive. In addition, we believe strongly in rewarding employees for exceptional work, so that 3% earned merit adjustment is included in that. We have been working with the Police Association and the Police Department on implementing a police pay step plan, and those numbers have been included in this. This is pretty standard with police departments across the state. And certainly will make us pretty competitive. One of our goals with this was, again, to be the leader in Yavapai County with where we're starting our police officers and where they top out at. And this includes officers as well as sergeants. We've made some slight adjustments with our health benefits, and also these numbers reflect the continuing cost increases with health care benefits. So that's reflected in that. Something that was talked about greatly by the council and certainly by our organization has been investing in our employees with continuing education opportunities. So this budget has a $25,000 allocation. This is a first come, first serve. So individuals that are seeking degree status or through the community college can get reimbursed up to a certain dollar amount on that. There's a buyback. The town has in the past allowed employees to buy back up to 40 hours of their vacation time or general leave time, and we have accommodated for that. Training and development is a town-wide number. That's a very large investment, but this is police department as well as all of our departments in terms of the investment with the various certifications, training, travel, those types of things that go into that. We've invested in some are proposing to invest in some software that our HR team can use to help develop some of our teams in different departments. So that's what that talent optimization and team building software is. Tied to that also is the engagement survey tool. That was one of the things that council identified that, one, how do we make sure we're engaging and understanding how employees feel on particular things, but we can use this also community-wide in doing surveys. Uniforms, this is not only PD, but it's making sure we have that distinctive look for our community. And so our staff, we need to make sure they have the right equipment, right tools. If they're in environments where they need to have the right shoes, steel-toe shoes, this budget certainly accommodates for that. Vehicles, we just had a presentation on that. We are wanting to do a full class and compensation study this next year, so that's bringing in an outside consultant who will do a deep dive not only in our structure, our pay grades, and where we are actually at the midpoint or paying actual employees, but looking at other jurisdictions and making sure that we are competitive. So we've programmed some dollars for that. As we have in prior years, and very important that we continue to buy down the debt that we have with our public safety retirement system. So this continues to chip away at that. And then the remainder of this are proposed positions that we are going to be requesting to be included in next year's budget. Most of these are going to be your frontline employees, so it's going to be things that are going to make a direct impact on the community, whether it's in our parks, our street, public works divisions, some of the back of the house types of things like the website administrator right now. That has been left to each department. And some, have individuals who can deal with websites really well. Others are juggling lots of other things and don't spend as much time. So this individual would really begin to look at, our entire website and manage the information and keep it relevant. So if there's any questions that you have on any of those positions, I can certainly go into any, additional detail. No questions? I'll go to the second one. Water is our second focus area, and we are recommending a number of really key projects in this realm. The first is doing a master drainage study, but beyond just doing a drainage study, we want to challenge whoever we're going to be working with. How do we not just get rid of water, because water is a precious commodity, and that's oftentimes how drainage engineers think, is how do you move water as quickly out of a community or out of a neighborhood. We want to start looking at how do we slow the water down and try to get as much recharge at appropriate locations. So obviously safety of our neighborhoods is first and foremost. So it's not about in any way trying to impact our homes or businesses with flooding, but how do we try to capture some of that water, slow that water down? We can't really capture it, but how do we slow that down so we get as much recharge back into our aquifer as possible, rather than letting it flow down the river to other communities? So that's going to be really important. The $2 million is a continuation project of what we've started this year with a recharge injection well. So this is taking our A+ water that's coming out of the effluent plant and being able to recharge it back into the aquifer so that we have access to that in the future. And then the other two components to this is whether the Water Smart Conservation Portal, all part of our smart meter program and providing information back to our public, but also the water education and outreach is an effort that we started this year to really make sure that we are communicating, educating, and providing key information to members of our community about water and our water usage. Any questions on water? The third focus area is our quality of life. This is really where, again, our citizens will see firsthand and experience the investments that are being recommended. So this ranges from, our street preservation and maintenance program. There's a huge, dollar investment there. That includes a number of different projects, and we'll get into additional detail and specifics with that. A number of different park projects. I'll just kind of highlight that Sunflower has been needing some improvement over time, and so this is going to be, I think, a great investment especially for that neighborhood. The Mountain Valley Park synthetic turf, it's over 10 years old. It gets a lot of use, and it's showing its age, and so it's really important from a liability standpoint that we can maintain these fields to minimize any sort of tripping hazards and those types of things. So this is a large investment, but very important. Antelope Park improvements, sidewalk improvements throughout the community. This includes, this $2 million figure is embedded in multiple different projects, so it's not $2 million for just to go out and do sidewalks, but it's included as part of some of our other large capital projects. The manhole or sewer improvements. In some of our streets, we've not raised sewer covers when we've done overlays on roads, and so this is going to be, I think, definitely noticed by the traveling public when we get those raised and they don't experience those bumps. Crosswalks and striping, we've got over $200,000 will be invested in that program. We are looking at, with our multi-use trail system, which was definitely valued by members of our public, going in and repaving almost the whole section of our multi-use trail system through the original part of Prescott Valley. So that'll be I think, definitely a well-received and highly popular item by the community. We will continue to keep briefing you and having conversations about the Glassford Hill open space acquisition. There's tremendous opportunity here with not only preserving land that is all beloved by the community, but there is huge potential for tourism and recreational opportunities with some of these pieces of property that we're looking at through state land. We've talked a lot about going in and doing some updates to our town code and the land development codes. We've got some funds that are identified for doing some updates on that. We've brought to you multiple times over the past several months updates on our microtransit system, so this is continued funding for that. And then the citizen mobile application, this is just the cost that will be embedded in the budget to be able to provide for that new system. Any questions on quality of life? All right, and the last one that I have, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Pell, is our prosperous community, and this is about jobs. How do we make sure that we, create the right business environment and be able to diversify our economy as much as we possibly can? So one of the key things that as we start to explore ways to expand our tourism, is one, getting people's attention as they're driving through our great town on Highway 69. So there's going to be the new freeway monumentation that will go in. This also includes some sort of a design at Glassford Hill. That's been one of our challenges, is many people just view Prescott Valley from driving on Highway 69, and they don't realize that we have an amazing community back, to the north of there. So we want to get their attention with something that is at Glassford Hill to draw them into our downtown area and beyond. Body-worn cameras is part of our public safety effort. This will be our first rollout of our organization having body-worn cameras, and there's the dollars for that. The public safety crime analytics software is going to be a tool that our geographical information systems team can use to assist the police department. So as we have crime data, we can do heat maps, identifying where we've got hot spots in the community, and then our police department will be able to strategize on how to, address those particular issues. And the last piece is, again, a continuation of what we've done in years past, and that's the investment that we make with the Economic Development Foundation, and in addition to some dollars internally with our own team for doing some recruitment and publication for retail. So with that, any questions of kind of some key big investments with our focus areas? All right, I am going to turn it over to Katie.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Davidson.
Yeah, just a question on the body-worn cameras. The big cost, I understand, is storage of that. Is that included in this, or is the technology finally advanced so it doesn't cost a doggone much?
Well, I think it advances, but they always want to charge a little bit more. So yeah, this does include our initial, we'll have to continue to, monitor the amount of storage that will be needed, and there's different options, there's different packages that we can look at on that.
Good afternoon, again, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council.
Welcome, ma'am.
So I'm going to get started with major fund summaries, but first I do want to highlight some of the differences that you're going to see in the budget this year. We did create some new categorizations, including one-time operating for those items that we're not going to see occur year after year. So it's kind of to help identify those and separate those out. So you're going to see that term a lot throughout the budget packet. Additionally, we have operating capital, and that is because we're structuring a more formalized 5-year capital improvement plan, which only includes projects that are larger than $100,000 in total. So those smaller projects, as well as machinery and equipment purchases and those kinds of things, are classified as operating capital. So that's where you're going to see those different terms throughout this plan. Additionally, as Mr. Davidson pointed out, there is a townwide increase in health insurance costs, so that's reflected across each department as we get into those summaries, as well as the COLA of 4% and the potential merit of up to 3% for employees does increase in all those areas. And with that, we'll get started on general fund. So we are projecting a 9% increase in overall revenues compared to 21-22 projections, so current year projections. With that, you can see that even with that, our cash balance is projected to go down. This last column on the far right side, the 2022-23 budget, shows our cash balance dropping, and that is because we're making significant investments in infrastructure and other capital in this upcoming year. Additionally, we are expecting our expenditures to increase because we are planning on transferring $2.9 million to the Capital Project Growth Fund. Originally, it was planned that any construction sales tax revenues would be transferred over to the Capital Growth Fund, so that could be reserved for other capital projects instead of keeping it in the general fund to rely on for recurring expenses. So with that, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor?
I think that's a fabulous idea because that construction sales tax money is one-time money, and to put it over in capital rather than trying to use it for ongoing and banking on it, I think that's a brilliant idea, and I thank you and Gilbert for that.
Thank you. And we are starting with 75%, but we hope to get that to 100% in future years. It's something that had always been planned to do. In fact, it's been part of policy for a long time, but it just wasn't given as much priority in the past, and I think it's a good investment as well. Additionally, we're putting $3.3 million or proposing $3.3 million in contingency. That is close to the maximum that we can put in per policy. We can put in up to 5% of the general fund and HERF operating or budgets. And with that, we want a little bit more flexibility with so many things up in the air and with the costs of materials and goods rising, as well as the ability to address things during the year as they come up. So as always, council would have to approve any use of those contingency funds. So there's possibility that that money would not get spent in the year. It just gives us a little bit extra flexibility with the budget in case any of those unforeseen expenses come up. Specifically, I know we're looking at Glassford Hill, the purchase of that, and we're not sure where that's going to lay this year. There may be other studies or things that we need to do to help procure that. So that's just letting us have that flexibility in the budget. Additionally, we have a $3 million increase in personnel costs in the general fund, and the bulk of this is from the STEP plan implementation, the new positions, because we are adding a significant number of new positions, and the other items that we already discussed. And so with that, if you look at the green bar, you can see that's the stabilization fund, so that's the rainy day fund, as well as the blue fund, which is the unassigned and unavailable fund balance. So that's 25% of the general fund revenues we consider as unassigned, but we don't want to spend that. The yellow bar is technically the available, but we also don't want to see that drop down to nothing because that limits our ability in future years to do larger projects or as things come up to handle those changes.
So Katie, so that's the reserve balance, correct?
The blue and the green section would be the reserve, yes.
And how much are we going to have in reserves?
With this, we're going to have just under 20 million.
Which is about 40% of our annual? So that's a really good number. Thank you.
Absolutely. So the next fund is Highway User Revenue Fund, or HERF. With this, we do anticipate an increase in overall revenues. Part of that is from the increase in the general fund transfer. We are looking at increasing the transfer from the general fund from 2.5 million to 3 million for some of the larger projects we're doing. You'll notice on this graph, you don't see a reserve balance because there isn't any per policy. We do not want to see that yellow go away completely, though. Because we do fund personnel out of HERF, we also have ongoing debt service, which will be completed in 3 more years. And then HERF will be freed up about $2 million a year to be able to take on additional projects and maintenance as well. We are projecting a large amount of projects in the upcoming year, around $6.4 million in projects in HERF, and a slight increase in personnel costs, but we are adding some additional positions that do impact HERF as well. Yes, sir.
The HERF fund, is that determined by the legislature?
There are specific uses that we have to utilize those funds for because the bulk of the revenue that we get is from the state.
Okay.
So there are specific limitations on how we can use that money. It needs to be used to further improvement of roads and maintenance, roads and streets and highways.
If they ever come up with a budget, huh?
So next we have wastewater fund. This is a combination of all the wastewater funds under the umbrella of wastewater fund because the main fund is what covers any of the deficits in the other funds. And with that, you can also see that the reserves are relatively minimal. It's only required that we keep 25% of the operating expenses in reserves. However, that would not be wise to drop it down to the green bar. You do see the drop that's happening this next year, and again, that's significant investment in infrastructure. We do have the Southside Lift Station, which is a large project that we've been committed to. So that is a $5.5 million project that is the bulk of that drop in the balance. Additionally, we're going to be starting some projects with Headworks, completing the design phase, and then the following year, we're expecting to have a large project for that, which is another $6 million approximately. So with water, similar to wastewater, the green bar represents the 25% of the operating expenses. We are having a drop here as well for a large portion of projects, and we'll go through those in the utilities section. Additionally, we changed some of the way we looked at the ongoing maintenance and moved some of the things that would have used to be in capital to operating so we can continue to fix those things annually versus having to put it in the capital every year. And so this is just a summary schedule of the cash balances for all of the town's funds. We don't have to go through line by line, but we have a lot of special funds that do have specific purposes. So we have things like our police safety fund, where it's only used for police safety equipment, and that can be the only use of that. And our donation fund, which is made up of donations that we get from the public. So that's the list. The estimated ending cash balance, second column from the end, shows you approximately where we'll end up at the end of next fiscal year, should the budget be adopted as presented. Any questions so far?
I guess I would just like at the very top for you to explain that negative number for the audience.
Absolutely. The change in cash balance column shows how much we are drawing down on those dollars that we've saved up. It's similar to your savings account that you have. Over the years, we've built up reserves as well as additional available cash to fund these projects. So it's not dropping us below our reserve limit, as you saw in the cash charts. It is just using some of those amounts that we have gotten in the past. Specifically, general fund is an area where we have received specific revenues in the last few years, including litigation revenues from the library litigation. So that money was collected in a prior year, but it's being used in this upcoming budget year to repair the library. Additionally, we received a little over $5 million from the CARES Act and that offset our public safety expenses last year and a little bit, or in last year. And with that savings, we were able to reallocate some of that money to other expenses, and we're putting that towards the YMCA contribution that council had chosen to support them with. In the current year budget, we're just not expecting to spend it all, so it's in next year's as well. Does that
Yes,
help?
and then the number at the bottom, the negative number at the bottom.
The negative 28 million is because that is a draw on every fund that the town has. And the majority of the funds, other than the ones that we discussed, don't have ongoing operating costs. They're specifically for large capital or investments or other one-time expenses. So they're all one-time revenues that are being utilized for the expenses. We've saved up that money in our piggy bank, and now we're going to be spending it.
Which is how we all do real life, and we still have 40% in reserves should anything happen.
Correct. We are in a good spot with the general fund. In fact, we're at the highest amount of reserves that we've had ever. And we want to maintain those levels because we don't know what will happen in the economy. There's a lot of unknowns in the future, so we want to be fiscally prepared for the stability of Prescott Valley. So with that, I'll get into departmental summaries. First one, community services. They have a lot of exciting things happening in community services. There's been a struggle for a while with security issues at the library, so the budget does propose 2 part-time security guards, as well as a shift in the maintenance operations, becoming more of a in-house operation versus outsourcing the park maintenance to other contractors. So it is also adding a maintenance worker 3 position. Their operating did go down, and that is primarily due to the fact that we consolidated both the library facility and the police facility under the facilities division in Public Works. So we're trying to align and streamline things better, so it allows Josh to have, a facilities manager to have greater ability to control the repairs and the maintenance and the needs and the utilities of those buildings, to have them all under that one umbrella. So it didn't change much, it just moved it from one department to another, which is why there's the large decrease there. Additionally, let's see, they have a variety of capital, including Antelope Park improvements with ball field lights, which will be great, and that is coming out of impact fees. Again, that is a growth-related project, and it'll add lights and ability to have more activities at the park. And that is on, I believe, the soccer field and the t-ball field, if I'm
So there's 2 ball
correctly.
fields. There's a
I think it's
north and a
for
south
both.
field there. We'll go around the entire perimeter of both fields. I see heads nodding, so, okay, thank you.
And then the restroom replacement, we're proposing, as we go through this, you'll see certain things that we are proposing be funded out of the remainder of our ARPA dollars. We were able to get some additional flexibility with the change in the final rule on how those funds could be spent, which allows us to use them for any government service because we receive less than $10 million. So as we go through, we do have those items noted, and we'll have a slide at the end that shows you the total of what we're proposing to spend of those ARPA dollars, so we can discuss that further as well. And then we have the Central Core multi-use path improvements. We are looking at some significant overhaul of the asphalt, or of the concrete there, to overlay it with asphalt, and to replace the plastic fencing with metal handrails, as well as in some sections there is still going to be concrete repair necessary, as well as additional signage that we want to be able to add to that. Mountain Valley Park synthetic turf is in dire need of replacement. It has been. I know Casey's been trying to get it for a few years, and it would be just beneficial all the way around if we could replace that. There's a lot of wear and tear on that turf. And this would be for the main soccer field, and then the following year, we do have 400,000 in the CIP, not out of ARPA, but out of general fund to replace the T-ball field. And then the sunflower. No, you're fine.
Are the park rangers in here?
There are no park rangers in here. And then Sunflower Park improvements. It's the playground, 2 ramadas, as well as improving the walking path, expanding the parking lot, and some other repairs there. Does anyone have any other questions on community services?
So we're using volunteer park rangers. I'm just concerned about the park. We talked about this.
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council, so you're referring to hiring specific park rangers to be located in the park?
Well, we talked about this because of the skate park and.
I believe it, Vice Mayor, if I may speak, I think it's in regards to just the overall security of Mountain Valley Park in regards to the strategies being used by police and parks included. I believe that's what we're discussing, right?
I think the approach that we're going to be looking at is let's get the cameras in place and the signage that clearly notifies the public that they're being, monitored. There are strategies, and we've had a team working between PD and community services on ways to better engage not only those that attend the park, but the neighborhood around. So there are some things that we're going to be doing to implement that. The cameras are underway now, so we're going to be doing the trenching and getting all of those installed. So I would recommend that we get that in first, and then if we want to look at a volunteer program and then eventually add additional staff for that. You will notice, we had mentioned the security here in the library, so that's going to help not only here, but some of the issues right around the building, and then we can try to expand that in future years. But I think the cameras and the signage that we're going to have is definitely going to get people paying attention to that we mean business and don't want bad activity taking place at that park.
Very cool, thank you. That's the answer to my question. Chief, we also talked about bicycles out at that park as well, just so you know.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Any other questions on community services? Okay, so the next one is the council budget. As you all know, we've gone through the process of approving a change in code to be able to provide health and dental benefits to council. That would not start until January, but it does impact the estimated budget as well. Additionally, the strategic planning session is something that would be a formal session every other year, so there is a slight decrease in operating there. Any questions? All right, I'll just keep going until you all have any.
We'll let you know when those questions come. How's that?
We're doing great.
So development services is next. In development services, there was a reclassification that increased personnel of the new engineering manager in development services. Additionally, they do have a slight decrease in operating, but the majority of that was from the owner-occupied housing rehab grant. With that, in the current year, we had 2 years of that grant because of COVID and how delays happened. So we had additional funds in the current year budgeted. Next year, it's back to a normal annual amount. Additionally, we're looking at some one-time operating investments, including the town code or land development code revision and the consulting along with that. Additionally, finishing out the general plan and any other consulting needed for the department. So at the town manager's office, there is a decrease in personnel, and that was from the reclassification of a few positions out of the town manager's office, and the addition of a website administrator, as well as a temporary intern. And the talent optimization and team building software caused the operating to increase significantly because their operating was pretty small. But that software is an ongoing purchase that'll help allow that team optimization and team building. With finance, we do have in the budget the addition of a grants manager as well as an additional accountant that would be a mid-year start, so that position wouldn't start till January. Additionally, the IVR system is not cloud hosted currently, so we'd like to transition to that. More and more, we're trying to host things on vendors' cloud services for PCI compliance, as well as a number of security issues. It helps to get it off of our database, and then we're not responsible for that, and these vendors focus on protecting that data and put a lot of time and resources into ensuring that all the up-to-date compliance requirements are met. Additionally, we are looking at doing a formalized water and sewer rate study. We haven't had a formalized rate study for a while. It's been a few decades. And so it's time to look at that and perhaps look at the options for our rates as we look at conservation being part of that, as well as perhaps different tiers for different types of businesses. You know, we have a very simplified structure right now, and there may be something that would better suit the ongoing needs of our water and wastewater systems while being fair to our average ratepayers. The majority of our customers, you know, are just average citizens. So we wouldn't want to necessarily propose rates that are increasing across the whole board. So we want to talk to consultants and see if we can best identify how we could recapture more of those funds from businesses that are putting more strain perhaps on those resources. Anyway, that'll be a further discussion, but those are.
I'm very excited about the grants manager and writer.
We are too. It'll be really great to be able to centralize that process throughout the town and have them look for those opportunities to where we can really bring more funds, federal funds and state funds, into the town for different programs and needs of the community. So human resources, we did reclass the assistant town manager to the chief human resources officer from executive management, as well as a class and comp study, as Gilbert spoke about, that is included, and the tuition reimbursement and continuing education program. The parameters of that will be thoroughly defined, and then we'll move forward with that so our staff can utilize those benefits. We also have the employee enticement and retention program. That is a work in progress, and we're expecting to bring that back to council with a policy of how we expect to utilize those funds. There's a variety of different methods that you can retain and entice employees to come work for our town, and that's just giving the funding to be able to start exploring that area. And then we also have the employee engagement survey tool. With IT, we are adding a IT support specialist position, and GIS staff has been reclassified from Public Works. Additionally, don't let the operating increase scare you. What that consists of is moving the ongoing software maintenance costs from the non-departmental budget to the information technology budget. So all we did was move those dollars over to the IT budget, so it's handled and managed under Mr. Danner, and it'll allow for flexibility there for him to be able to manage those things better. Additionally, we're looking at creating internal service funds, not in this budget, but in the next year's budget. So putting things in those different areas will help us put us in a good place to start looking at those options next year. Additionally, he has included IT master plan and cyber plan consulting. That'll help form how we want to protect the town as we move forward. You know, the online threats are getting greater and greater, and it's just a thorough plan and review, especially with external consultants as well, so we can make sure we're doing the best we possibly can to protect the data of all of the citizens whose information we receive. With legal, similar to prior years, they have outside legal counsel for certain matters, as well as contracted paralegal services and one-time operating. So for example, this one-time operating in here is a copier purchase. So that's the kind of equipment that is in one-time operating. Because it doesn't happen very frequently, it still needs to be designated. With magistrate court, again, the increase is primarily from their triennial audit. Every 3 years, they undergo an audit process in addition to our town audit review. Then we're on non-departmental. So with non-departmental, we are suggesting that the PSPRS unfunded liability payment remain at $2 million. We've seen our payment drop, or our unfunded liability drop. We're at approximately $9 million now from the payment we made this last year. So we're excited to see when the new reports come out where we're at.
Where do you expect us to be?
You know, we had some people that were higher wage earners retire, and we have a few employees that are in the drop program right now. Where the town benefits on that end, we continue to make those, we budget per policy and make those payments to the system, even if we're not paying them for the employee if they're in drop. So we help offset more of our unfunded liability that way. Additionally, I think we'll be able to put a little towards it at the end of this year, because anything that's not spent in the PD operating budget, we do transfer, we do an estimate and then transfer over to PRS at the end of the year. So I think at the end of this year, I think we're going to see it drop a little bit. I think we'll be down to, I hate guessing, Mr. Mayor.
That's fine. That's okay.
Probably about 7.5. That would be my estimate, but we'll see.
Well, we'll see how you turn out.
And that's after the $2 million that's going toward it?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I think it'll,
We're doing good.
we'll see. We are chipping away at it, and we do think if we keep making this progress, we'll be able to get it down to a reasonable amount where we may go, okay, we want to pay off everything to drop it. But we are making good progress, so that's a positive. And we did look at a variety of options, including pulling out a debt service on it. But the reality is, if we keep making the payments that we're paying, we would have it paid off sooner than if we pulled out additional debt on it. So it seemed more beneficial to continue the path we're on. And then in the next 2 or 3 years, we'll need to look at it and see if we want to carve a larger piece to pay it off completely, or if we want to just take these small steps.
Sure.
Additionally, there is outside agency funding, including PVEDF, the Prescott Valley Economic Development Foundation, $200,000, the Chamber of Commerce, $150,000, CASA Senior Center, $40,000, Prevent Child Abuse, Yavapai Family Advocacy, $35,000, our Emergency Services Agreement, $21,500, and Arizona Crisis Team, $13,500. At the bottom, you'll also see the YMCA facility contribution of $4.7, and that is the remainder of what was previously allocated by council that just hasn't been utilized yet. And then we have Event center operations and debt service. When we get to the CFD side, we'll be going through the entertainment center budget or the event center budget. Basically, right now, the town does cover the debt service as well as any operations that aren't covered by the activities of the center. And then we have our developer reimbursements. We do have one of those agreements that will be ending, so this number is significantly less than prior years. We will be making our last payment on that either at the end of this coming quarter. We will have reimbursed for the Glassford Hill agreement. And so that's exciting as well. And then we do have the Parkway CFD contribution of $70,000. That is the same amount that we contributed this current year. And we do have that coming out of the general fund additionally to help offset the rates for those property tax or property owners. In capital, we do have $10 million budgeted in miscellaneous grants, and that is primarily due to the energy audit process that we're going through right now. There may be some opportunities to solicit funds for improvements that are recommended through that energy audit process, and we wanted to have the flexibility to apply for those grant funds as well as others with the grant manager position coming on board. Another project is the council's chamber sound improvements, so that'll be a good improvement in council chambers here. And contingency we already covered, $3.3 million. And we also have the exhibition center payment, the second one of 5. And then we have the transfers that we talked about, as well as the transfer to debt service to make our annual debt service obligation payment. So next we have police. There is a 7% increase in personnel in police, and that is due to the step plan structure that will be started for both police officers and police sergeants. We had an outside consultant working on this to make sure we were, it was a well thought out plan that would be beneficial to the town and help retain those highly qualified police officers and sergeants. Additionally, it's the records program manager that will be added, and that is specifically for handling a lot of the body-worn camera back end. We imagine that person will probably be working with both legal and the police department to handle the record retention and records requests and everything else according to state law required for the body-worn cameras, and the addition of 1 patrol officer. In some of the documents it said traffic officer, and that was confusing. We weren't, they may be assigned to a traffic duty, but it's just a patrol officer. On our dispatch services, those have gone up slightly, as well as some of our other ongoing maintenance contracts. We've seen increases across the board townwide on those kind of things as the cost of goods continues to rise with inflation. And then with their operating capital, as Gilbert talked about, the body-worn cameras, we also have $200,000 projected in future years as well. They were looking at a program where they may get a portion of the cameras at first and kind of phase that in. Additionally, they're looking at grant opportunities, so we may be able to put more money towards it this first year, depending on the results of those grants. And then the CrimeView analytics software for the heat mapping of crime. GIS will be working with PD closely on this. and then radio tower upgrade and throwbot. Yes.
So how many cameras is the 200,000 going to buy to start?
I believe they were going to equip all the officers with them, but I want to say it was going to. Sorry, that's probably
18? 81.
81.
Okay.
That's awesome.
So I have a couple questions.
Yes.
Mostly for the new chief, or just comments, I guess. So we talked about officers in schools. The mayor had talked to the superintendent about more officers stopping by the schools so we have a presence. And then we talked about take-home vehicles. Is take-home vehicles in here and part of the new leasing?
Take-home vehicles are not in here. It's going to be something where Chief Ticer is able to put a plan together for how, and a policy on how we would incorporate those. And then we would get that scheduled for the following year budget.
Perfect.
And that'll give us the time to implement it. Additionally, the lead times on police vehicles, as we talked about in the last meeting, we're not expecting any vehicle delivery till December. For the equipped police vehicles, it may even be spring. So if we're able to get a policy in place over the fall, we could get those vehicles potentially ordered, after coming back to council and discussing it prior to the new budget year. It would just, because we wouldn't actually be we wouldn't actually receive them until the next year. So it'll be
Good answer.
ongoing discussion.
Good answer. What about more speed trailers?
I do not believe there's any speed trailers specifically in the budget.
That's just what residents always ask for.
But there is, if the need arose during the year, there are probably areas, I think they spend, I want to say the last one was just under 20,000. So they may have some flexibility in other areas if that ends up being a priority. So Public Works, as you can see, there is a large change here, and that is really attributed to the significant amount of capital infrastructure investments that are being proposed for the upcoming year. Personnel increased slightly. It was offset by some of the movement that we discussed earlier, as well as the addition of a construction inspector to help bring some of those activities in-house, and a maintenance worker one for streets, as well as a traffic engineer. And then with their operating, it had a large increase, but the majority was because of those facility account movements that we talked about earlier for library and police, as well as the fleet budgets for each department because of the centralized look at fleet under Public Works. We consolidated all the repair and operations for those vehicles, with the exception of fuel, under the fleet division. So all the tires, oil changes, all of those expenses are consolidated under the fleet division now.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Okay, so I'm very excited about the construction inspector and the traffic engineer. Is that a first time for us? Yeah, so that's,
As far as I know, yes.
that's really good. And then we have the crosswalks actual study in here. Is that the actual painting on the road or another study?
There is another study for the phase 2 portion that's 100,000, and then there's striping in there for the crosswalks for another 100,000.
So, okay, so we have the actual paint in here too.
Correct.
Okay, cool. And then, did I hear you say that Josh was getting a helper?
He got a helper with some reallocation of positions with some retirement that they had in their area. He was able to add a facilities helper in the current year. And then this one for the next year is a maintenance worker one for streets.
Perfect. And then I just want to give another plug because my neighbors are going to ask me for the FEMA community rating system. That isn't in here, but we can talk about it later.
So it also includes the town master drainage plan update. That's phase 1. It is expected to be around a $700,000 study. We are expecting that to be offset by flood control dollars from the county. Additionally, there's $2 million in micro surfacing and other street operation maintenance. And then we've laid out the amount we plan on spending for landscaping services, janitorial services, mowing services. A new one this year would be holiday light installation. In the past, we had the streets crews putting those holiday lights up, and we believe it would be a better use of their time to outsource those activities and allow them to focus on that maintenance. And then we have the transit program operations. I don't know if anyone saw the buses outside, but they're pretty cool. They just took delivery of those. And then with capital, on Public Works, we have a large amount of capital, including the biggest project is our Glassford Hill Road improvements, and that is the actual replacement of the road from Highway 69 all the way to Panther Path. And it actually pulls, I'm sure Norm could go into detail if you'd like.
Oh, I'm sure you can.
But it, from my understanding, they actually pull out that asphalt and then replace all of it. So it'll make the drive a lot more smooth on Glassford Hill Road. Additionally, we have the library building improvements. In the past, that was under non-departmental, but we have put it under facilities, which is why it's showing up under Public Works now. And then we have Viewpoint Drive improvements to repair some of the sections there, as well as looking at a 2-lane structure for part of it. Florentine Road improvements are a great improvement that is a continuation from this current year that'll go into next year. And with that, a large portion of that is funded through ARPA dollars. Then we have the Starlight Drive improvements, which includes sidewalk, as well as pipeline multi-use path improvements. This one is a tentative. We're looking at trying to secure transit dollars because it connects on the pipeline path. It would extend the portion kind of near Highway 89A or under that section of it, as well as repair some of the path. And it would be a 20% match for the town if we were to get that funding. So that one's kind of a tentative, may not happen, but we're going to be attempting to get that transit grant to allow us to, or transit funds to allow us to do that. And then we have Viewpoint Drive Phase 1. This is at the Pronghorn intersection to help strengthen the underlayment. So when we look at expanding in future years, we can do that properly. It'll give it the strength it needs and stability in that section. And then Prescott East Highway improvements, it's a partner project with the county to actually repair as well as improve drainage. And I believe there may be some traffic calming, which could help address some of the concerns that we've received from citizens in that area in the past. It is not the whole project, it's just a portion. Coming from our budget, the county is doing the majority of the work on that and providing the majority of the funding. Then we have the Glassford Hill 3rd lane sidewalk improvements to extend sidewalk to Tuscany, I believe, between is it to Tuscany? Long Look to Tuscany, I believe. All the detail of the projects is in the back of the book, so. And then we have the Coyote Springs pedestrian enhancements near the school and the entrance monuments, as well as landscape improvements of some median areas along Viewpoint, as well as drawing a blank on that, but and Bradshaw Road sidewalk improvements. There's a little section where we'd be adding sidewalk on Bradshaw Road. And then the manhole improvements are both on the public works side for the asphalt portion of that, as well as the wastewater side. We have $200,000 on the wastewater side for those projects as well. And then the 100,000 for the crosswalk striping is the other portion that we discussed, where the study's on the operating side, and this is the actual striping. And then the park, shop, building, and yard is a proposed design and study to look at potentially building a facility at Mountain Valley Park that would house the parks equipment as well as the parks crew. Right now they share the building on Long Mesa with Public Works. And this would allow the design to go into potentially expanding or creating a building over there so they can have a centralized location for them, closer to the Mountain Valley Splash, as well as to where they need to get that equipment. On the Public Works side, this would free up space in the building to allow us to maybe do more of fleet maintenance in future years in-house. There's a lot of things that it could potentially open up for the town, and that's the point of the funds this year, to kind of look at that study and how we could best utilize those resources, or create a new building and go from there. The following item is the Civic Center space study and remodel. As parks and public works have grown, so has the rest of the town. So this is to really look at the different areas to make them more conducive to business with the public. There's certain areas that are not getting the full benefit of that customer experience because they're so consolidated. And that would be a multi-tier thing, looking at potentially if we were to not renew the lease with some of our tenants, taking over a larger portion of the joint facility in the following year, and it's just an analysis of all those things to see what we can best do for the town. And then the continuation of the Civic Center carpet replacement.
Katie, sorry, a question on page 97. I don't see any block grant project on there.
You don't see any what? Sorry.
A community development block grant project.
Some of the ones that are CDGB are under, they just say grant fund.
Okay.
It just doesn't always specify that they're CDGB, because we do have a couple of those going on right now. I believe. And did you have any other? Okay. So town clerk, we would be adding an administrative support position to help with their front counter. This will allow for them to help businesses more. We've talked a lot about offering more resources to businesses as they're getting started with information, and kind of have a business resource kind of center. So it's kind of our first step to achieve that goal. Their operating increased significantly. As you've seen in the past, it is due to an election. So with the election services, printing and postage, that causes the town clerk's budget to fluctuate from year to year. And we are recommending electronic posting boards, which are an exciting change. It would allow basically any of the posting boards where we have to post those items right now to be done electronically. We would still have them placed as required throughout the Civic Center. But it would be a nice change to be able to do that and not have to print out the paper. Then we have utilities. So with utilities, there's an addition of an engineer for mid-year start. And then there is a lot of one-time operating projects, including meters, consultant fees, as well as education and outreach for water-related issues. And then we also have the water sewer operations contract, and the normal repairs and rehabilitations of both tanks, wells, and our water and wastewater systems. And a continuation of the Water Smart portal. We are running into challenges with obtaining the transmitters. The supply chain issues have continued to be an issue, but we are working on those things. On the capital side, we have a significant amount of strategic capital, including water rights. We don't have any specific water rights that we're looking at purchasing, but this is similar to the rights that council purchased this last year, where we spent right around $1 million to secure additional rights when they became available. So it's kind of a placeholder, if you will, if we were to see any of those other opportunities come up for that. As well as we've requested funds from the county's ARPA distribution for both a hydrant project as well as meter projects within the town and adjoining areas. And we're still waiting to hear any results of that. And then we have the lift station at Southside and Village Way. That's the large capital that we had talked about, the $5.5 million, as well as water lines and some upsizing in different sections, as well as planning for duplex booster station upsizing, so the planning phase of that with a larger project to follow. There's a few of those that we're going to be investing in this next year in the design to get everything in place for future development. And the wastewater treatment plant improvements are a large-scale improvement. This next year, we're doing the headworks, finishing up the headworks design, and then there's some smaller items that we're going to be taking care of this next year with the larger headworks improvements the following year. We have some option items. So as with every budget, every item we talk about is an option item for council, but these are just some that are highlighted that we can discuss if there's different feelings on council of how you would like to proceed. Glassford Hill purchase, right now we don't know the amount on that. That's just a tentative, you know, we'll see as the year progresses and we get more information on that, what we can do. Glassford Hill road improvements, that's the repair project of the asphalt. Contingency, transfer to HERF that we increased to the $3 million. The construction sales tax transfer and our unfunded liability payment, as well as the water rights, the vehicle leasing program, our drainage plan update. And they get smaller as we go down. I don't know if we need to go through every item unless you guys would like to discuss any in particular or any other items on this list.
Council, you have any specific questions for Ms. Pale in regards to these items?
So then this is the ARPA allocations. So the very first, under the original allocation, the first column there, the October 14th is what council had allocated at that point. The adjustment column either has been made through additional council actions or we're suggesting a reduction. And then we are looking at basically budgeting the 22-23 budget column is what we're projecting to put in the budget or what we have in the budget currently. We're not looking at spending much this year. The biggest thing that we're going to look at reducing is the exterior enhancement grant program. With that, we are looking at maybe we finalized on April 29th and we had approximately 13 applications. We're still going through the last few and gathering the last few things from people who turned them in. And we don't think we're going to utilize all those funds. We think 300,000 would fully cover that. And then we do think that the Central Core multi-use path improvements, as well as the Mountain Valley Park synthetic turf and Sunflower Park improvements and Antelope Park restroom would be large investments for the community that would be a good use of these funds to help encourage outdoor activity, as well as allow for those investments in that infrastructure for the community. Any questions? Additional considerations as we move to tentative budget adoption include Arizona State retirement. As we discussed in the budget retreat, we are looking at the option of potentially joining that system and looking at what that would entail. So we're not sure if that would impact this budget year. Most likely, if we did do a change mid-fiscal year, it would be something where we would be able to have savings in other ways in the personnel area, and those would all be changes that we bring back to council to approve. We also have seen incredibly long lead times for rollover equipment or for equipment purchases, so we're looking at compiling a list of rollover items that we'll be including that are not included in this current budget, but over the next couple of weeks, we'll be getting that finalized list from departments for large items that are over $10,000 that need to roll into next year, because we're not going to take delivery of them until after June 30th. And then just in general, inflation has been off the charts. Our CPI has been at 8.5% as of March 2022. And that'll impact goods and services across the board. And in this next year, we'll look at implementing things from both the class and comp study results, and that's where the contingency budget gives some flexibility to the council if they didn't want to wait until the following year. If we find things are skewed more than we think on personnel and we need to do something to retain employees, then we can. Additionally, with the water and sewer rate study results, we would look at doing that, starting that process early in the year. So there may be some things that we need to do in regards to that. The next steps are the tentative budget adoption, as well as publishing the notices of public hearing and final budget adoption in June, typical to our normal schedule on that.
Vice Mayor?
I have a couple that I didn't bring up when I was supposed to, and that is a shout out for tourism marketing. Money for tourism marketing.
Money for tourism marketing. We do not have anything specific for tourism marketing that I recall.
I think the website will help that.
So that, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely there. I think the Glassford Hill
Yes.
kind of monumentation will definitely be a positive in that regard. That's certainly an area that we want to grow. And I think the Glassford Hill project would be directly tied to that. So if we were able to advance on that project with state land and with Prescott and Yavapai County, there'll be tremendous opportunities to really expand our tourism marketing effort.
And I feel like we could do a little bit more through community services when we mail out the packets to the softball and baseball places and make that a little bit more jazzed up and give them a list of restaurants and a list of stores and their addresses and things like that when we send that packet out, if that's possible.
Absolutely.
And it won't cost a lot. And then also affordable housing incentives. I know we're talking about maybe doing a summit sometime, hopefully, and then I know we talked about handrails in the parks, but can we look at, since maybe we'll have some staff time savings not putting up holiday lights, that we can go through the whole town and work on those handrails, because a lot of them are in major disrepair. And then I love the more straightforward CIP. and I like the look of the new budget. I know you totally had to revamp it this year, and it's wonderful. Thank you for that. It's much more customer and residential friendly. And then just a plug for a mid-year adjustment if we need it, as things come up and change, and that $3 million we have in reserves if we need to do something at mid-year. I totally support a mid-year adjustment. Thank you. You did great.
Councilman?
Yeah, Katie, how much has the fuel cost impacted our budget?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Our fuel budget?
We did
Which is-
increase our fuel budget in most areas, specifically PD is where we use a lot of fuel, as well as Public Works. We did have those amounts increased. The costs on that have been, we've kept them pretty well. We've been able to cover any overages with other parts of our operating budget in the current year, and we do have some additional budgeted for next year.
Okay.
And Katie, I just wanted to say thank you again for your presentation. You always put it in layman's terms and make it so understandable. So just wanted to say thank you, and to everybody who's worked so hard on the budget this year. Thank you.
Great job, Katie. That's it for us. So we appreciate it. No other questions, and we're going to be moving on to adjournment on this, and then we invite everyone to stick around for a very exciting Community Facilities District Board coming up, so.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
We won't need a motion on this one, sir. So, we're in work study. We'll give the clerk 10 minutes, if that's okay, and then we'll start back up. Call to order, Community Facilities District Board, May 4th, 2022. Clerk, please call the roll.
Board Member Kinzinger.
Present.
Board Member Dickinson.
Here.
Board Member Hepperly.
Here.
Board Member Schumacher.
Present?
Board Member Packard.
Present.
Vice Chair Hunt.
Here.
Chairman Plaguda.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Pale, you are up for the Community Facilities District budgets.
Hello, so we have the entertainment center budget first. With this budget, we are having a slight decrease projected, a very slight decrease, as well as a increase in their capital. They did provide, Shane at the entertainment center did provide a 5-year capital improvement plan last year that we incorporated into their budget, and this is the items that would be on the current scale, including a audio system upgrade. That's been a source of continual challenges at the center, and it'll help get more activities to come in and more acts to want to go there if people can actually hear them properly. So that's one of the investments that they would like to be making, as well as railing system on the retractable seating, BMS program for their ice plant and HVAC, and exhaust fans in the concession stands. And the debt service in the entertainment center is not changing much. It stays pretty steady until 2037 when the $16 million debt service ends, and 2033 when the $2 million debt service ends.
All right.
And with that, are there any questions on the entertainment center?
What's the total amount that we owe on the event center?
It was 18 total, and we've paid on it for a few years. We're probably at approximately, I would say right around 14.5.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Then we have Parkway CFD. Parkway is an ad valorem taxing district, so we set the rates through property taxes. The bonds will be paid off in 2031. In this area, the assessed limited value actually decreased due to additional nonprofits buying properties in the area, which unfortunately increases the rates for the other businesses in this area. It is a commercial district, so it is businesses that are impacted. Even with the town's offsetting contribution of $70,000, we are expecting the rates for the property tax owners in that area to go up. Approximately $618 a property, but depending on the size of property and the commercial valuation, it can be a lot more for some of them. Pronghorn Ranch CFD expires in 2029 is when the bonds will be paid off. In this area, there was an increase in the limited value and a decrease in the property tax rate that we are proposing. It equates to an approximate decrease per property of around $9.50, so it's pretty minimal. It's staying pretty flat because these are all structured, as we've discussed in prior sessions, with the expenses of the district, with the debt service, and then it is divided out among the property owners in the district based on their assessed valuation. Additionally, in Pronghorn, there is around $46,000 that's budgeted in successor and interest charges that helps offset the cost on property owners. The next one is Quailwood Meadows CFD. Here, the assessed value had a slight increase, and we're not suggesting any change in the property tax rate. The rate will change, or the amount per property will change by about $25 for the homeowners in Quailwood Meadows. Part of this is the O&M. Last year we had dropped the operations and maintenance portion. The town can charge up to 30 cents. We had dropped it to 10 cents to help offset the significant increase in that was needed for the bond payment. So this year, we are pushing that back up to 25 cents, because even when we get it back up to 30, it still doesn't cover all the O&M, just like every other district. It doesn't cover the landscaping and other things that the town does cover on behalf of the district.
So help me here, Gilbert, you were out looking at the deferred maintenance on all the open space areas. Can these funds be used for that or not?
Only things that were actually purchased or
list.
acquired by the CFD.
Okay, so so the retention isn't.
When does that one
Is-
expire?
That one expires in 2029.
Thank you.
So both Quailwood and Pronghorn, 2029?
Correct. And on the retention, we do have, if that was for the off of Quailwood, the retention basin, we do have 36,500 in the town side to start that project. And then there's another 36,000 planned the following year. There's some riprap or drainage rock that we had put in for at Quailwood. It's Quailwood riprap is what they have it in the budget for, and it's a smaller amount, so it's not on the CIP, but it is split between 2 years starting this next year. So if that's what you're referring to on drainage, that might be part of it now. Okay.
Destroyed in the last flood, right? Was like taken out?
I don't believe there's actually been anything at where this is going. I don't think there was anything previously. Stone Ridge CFD expires in 2030. The bonds expire in 2030. There was an increase in the assessed value and a decrease in the property tax rate. In this area, we do have rental income from the clubhouse that offsets the cost of property owners, and the tax per home is not expected to change much, very minimally. And those are it for the ad valorem districts. The next one is Raven Ridge, which is a assessment billing district. So we bill only 4 properties now. We're down to 4 properties for a total of $890 is in the budget for that. It's our smallest budget by far. And that will end January 2024 if those property owners don't pay off their assessments before then. If they were to pay them off before then, it is through a WIFA loan, so we would pay that off as we receive those funds from them. And then Southside CFD ends in December of 2032. And with Southside, we do have 4 properties being billed still. As you all know, there is one property that the town has been making payments on after they fail to sell at auction. We still have hopes that perhaps that will sell in future years and the town will be able to recoup some of those funds. Until then, we help pay that so the debt service is not defaulted on.
And when was that one? Ends in December 2032?
Yes.
Where is Southside?
Southside's a commercial district, and it's out 69 a little ways as you're going out towards Quailwood and everything. Are there any other questions?
We have any other questions from Ms. Pale? Pretty cut and dry.
Yep, did a great presentation again.
With that being said, adjournment.
Thank you.